The Neil Haley Show on the Storehouse Media Group Podcast with our host, Sherrie Price Clark of Storehouse Media. Hi, Sherrie, and I know you have an amazing guest for us today.
Hi, Neil. I do have an amazing guest. It's somebody I've been wanting to get on for a while, but he gets booked up pretty frequently. His name is Trenton Gunsolley. Welcome, Trenton.
Hi there. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so just a little backstory is that I had gone on a cruise and Trenton happened to be the entertainment. He was a comedian, magician, and I don't remember ever seeing anyone like that, at least one that impressed me enough to remember. But he was so good, and he was funny, and he was quick. And I somehow got involved in a little magic trick with him, which kind of blew my mind. I still don't know how he did it, but we'll talk about that later. But a little bit more about Trenton is that he is a multi-talented entertainer and again, a magician. He's an actor and a vocalist and a jack of all trades. And you had your first professional magic performance at 15, which I want to hear about. Um, and you have this professional Amish musical theater actor thing going on, which we'd love to hear about. And you're a resident magician with Virgin Voyages, which is how I met you. So welcome.
That's right. Yeah, thanks for having me. I do remember asking for your help during that show, and I think you were a little hesitant at first, but we got it done and turned out pretty well.
Well, I'm gonna try to explain it real quickly. It was the craziest thing. So um, he asked me to pick a card, and I did, and don't show it to him. And then he had somebody else on the other side of the room give like a name of her and her favorite entertainment, and he did it on Wikipedia. And then she started reading all these links, and he would take the letters, and they would spell the word like compatible, combustible, and all that, to where the card I pulled was Idaho. And when she got through with all the words and he was able to form the words going vertical, it spelled Boise. I've never been to Idaho, but it was really an interesting little trick. He did a lot of little things like that that were just so amazing. But you had your first your first professional show as a magician when you were 15. And I just want to tell you, because people are so fascinated with magic, how did you get involved in actually doing it?
Yeah, well, I had been a fan of magic for a long time. I think 6 years old was the first time I ever tried a magic trick. I tried it on my mom and it failed miserably, but thankfully that didn't discourage me. I stuck with it. And yeah, by the time I was 15, I had learned a lot and I was still just as passionate about magic. And so I found a small theater in Colorado Springs and I booked it. My parents helped with that, of course. But yeah, over 100 people came, mostly friends and family. And that was kind of the start of it. I was like, wow, I could actually do this and people want to see this. And so I'm thankful for that experience from such a young age, because it really kind of set the trajectory for at least for the rest of my career up to this point.
What do you think is the magic code? How it's an exciting group to be a part of, right? Once you become a magician, you basically have this code. First of all, is magician code, and it's such a honored practice for so many years. What did you kind of delve into once you started becoming a magician to learn more about the history of magic and really the whole process of it to really understand it? Because that's so important to be a successful magician.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they'll YouTube how to do a card trick or how to read someone's mind, something like that, and you get a little taste of it. But one of my favorite sayings is, "The secrets to magic are usually difficult and often disappointing, and most likely both." So, in order to become a magician, full time, you really have to want to do it. And I think for me, studying the history behind magic, like you mentioned there, is really, it's fun, it's fascinating, there's crazy stories involved. And I remember when I was still learning, I was in school, I would get there early and go to the library and I would look up books. But they also had this, online databases that's public domain history information. And I would just look up famous magicians from 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and then I'd read a a little snippet of a trick they did, and I do more research on that trick to learn it. And so I think there is a lot of value in kind of the history of it. And for me, it was more than just, okay, here's the secret, here's how you do it. It was what's behind this, you know? What did it take for someone to come up with this?
Yeah, and I was going to ask you pretty much the same thing. It's like what you were doing during that show. It's like, is it like some kind of guidebook or something you figured out on your own? Maybe a combination, because you did some pretty impressive, and I won't, go into all of those. Like people were like, wow, like how did you do that? And you think as an audience member, you got it figured out. And then you you totally do something different. It's like, I did not see that one coming. So, I mean, is that what happens? Is that you study it, you just kind of create it yourself like a chef?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's definitely things that you can take a little bit from here, take a little bit from there, and kind of create your own routine, especially with sleight of hand and card tricks. That's how most magicians start. That's how I started. And once you get a really good foundation in sleight of hand, you can definitely create your own routines. It's kind of the saying, there's nothing new under the sun. And I think for the most part with magic, that's kind of true. But there's endless ways to kind of twist something or put your own spin on it. So a lot of my show is that I like taking classic magic effects and things that people haven't thought about for 100 years and finding a new spin to make it, comedic and relatable to a current audience today.
Hmm. Interesting. And who are your favorite magicians historically?
Historically, yeah. Unless you're into magic, it's probably a lot of people you haven't heard of. There's a guy, probably one of the biggest inspirations for me was a guy named Fred Capps. He was a phenomenal award-winning magician, kind of in the late 50s and 60s. Before him, there was a guy named Channing Pollock, who had this very polished, kind of your stereotypical top hat and tuxedo with coattails magician. But just his stage presence alone was enough to make people watch. More recently, there was a guy named Harry Anderson, who I'm sure people have heard of. He was an actor. He was on the show Night Court.
Yep.
He was also a comedian. But again, his kind of stage presence and his comedic timing, huge inspirations for me, as well as the tricks that he created. They're staples in a lot of magicians' routines, even if they don't do it the exact same way. He's definitely a big inspiration for me.
See, I didn't know he was a magician. I thought more of him on Night Court. Didn't know that
Yeah.
that was just playing a magician. He really was. That's why he did those tricks on while he was doing Night Court.
Yeah, and what I love about Harry Anderson is most people will associate him with SNL or with Night Court, and they'll be
Right.
like, "Oh yeah, he knew a couple tricks," but he was a magician's magician. I mean, he knew his stuff. He was incredibly, smart and intellectual about his routines, but also incredibly funny and just had kind of a performance factor that I think a lot of people lack nowadays.
Yeah. And then you have a magic musical that you have, like, yeah, that one I'm trying to figure out. What's that about?
Yeah, well, kind of the two passions in my life are music and magic. I started singing at 6 years old, which was about the same time that I started kind of getting into magic. And I've been really inspired by the music of the Great American Songbook. So if you think Frank Sinatra, Bobby Darin, kind of the Rat Pack, sort of old school Vegas charm, that's really the persona and the feel that I try to give to my shows. And a couple years ago, I started thinking, well, what if I could tell a story using these great songs and this music that speaks to people, and then combine it with kind of comedy and magic that is also highly enjoyable and relatable to people. So at this point, I've written and produced two separate magic musicals, different storylines. And now I'm currently working on a third one that will hopefully go into my act on the cruise ships. And this one is more of a cabaret, so kind of mixed media storytelling,
Mhm.
but uses original music, kind of big band and swing music that I've written, as well as, of course, the magic, and trying to combine it to create sort of an atmosphere that you might have seen, 40 or 50 years ago.
Because you perform on cruise ships and bigger crowds, are you ever thinking of doing America's Got Talent?
I get asked that question all the time. I don't think so. I have a lot of respect for the people that do America's Got Talent, because you get, at least your first round, you get like 90 seconds for the initial audition. And then if you make it on the show, I think you get 3 minutes or 4 minutes, something like that. And the type of magic that I love to do is one that really gets to know people. You get to connect with people. And I don't think those shows are for me necessarily, but they're fun to watch for sure.
So talking about the cruise ship life, and I've always wondered, you're part of the entertainment and you're part of the staff, I mean, what is life like on a cruise ship from that perspective?
Yeah, well, it's a little crazy sometimes, but it's also a lot of fun. I think the closest thing or the most common thing people expect to hear is that it's just like the TV show Below Deck. I don't know if you've watched that, but I think parts of it there's a lot of drama because you're living on a floating tank with 3,000 other people. But you get to know each other really well, and you kind of develop your own routines. And it's a lot of fun. I think some of the best relationships, best friendships I've had have come out of living on a cruise ship for over a year and a half at this point.
Wow.
Just being in close proximity with people. And you just get used to it. You get used to the movement, of course, the waves themselves, but also just, you're doing these safety drills, which is stuff you don't have to think about in day-to-day life. You don't have a car, you don't pay for anything really. So there's a lot of benefits to it, and I'm really grateful. I've been able to go to almost over 30 countries at this point, and I'd never be able to do that if it hadn't been for the cruise ships.
So I
And
guess
go ahead,
go
Sherry.
ahead.
No, I was going to say, so, and you said you work for Virgin, right? So you have an
Yeah.
experience. That's an experience, Virgin Cruise Lines, isn't it? Thinking of the whole Virgin brand in so many ways.
It is. Virgin kind of has a stereotype out there. Some of it's true, some of it is hype and exaggeration, but it's a lot of fun. The parties are great. And the entertainment, I think, is really kind of my style. It combines new techniques, new media, new ideas with kind of old standard concepts. And they bring top of the line entertainers. I'm sure Sherrie can attest to that. Hopefully you enjoyed your experience on the cruise line, but I'd encourage everyone, try a cruise at least once in your life, and try Virgin. You might enjoy it.
Well, I will tell you that on that particular cruise, you were the top entertainment. In my eyes, I thought you were so good and memorable and fun. And when you're on stage, you're just funny. And the way you respond to people, it's like you were talking about, you like that personal, you definitely have it with an audience, that whole personal persona where people get engaged and you engage with them. And it was really good. So, you know, let's talk about magic on land versus sea. Is there any difference being on a cruise ship or being on land in some uh, comedy club?
Yeah, there definitely is. I've done, numerous kind of corporate events on land. I've done magic at a couple weddings, and then I also do my own shows here and there while I can on land. I think the difference is pretty much any cruise ship you go on, there will be magic. And people kind of come with that expectation. Even if they're not thinking about it, they'll be reading the schedule and be like, oh, there's a magic show tonight. You want to go? And so it's kind of always accessible. And I would hope people are on a cruise, they're on vacation, they're usually in a good frame of mind, to experience magic. Whereas sometimes in corporate events, you know, they've been in meetings all day. They're talking about, you know, business strategies and lead generation. And then the company decides to bring in a magician at night and they're like, oh, we got to watch this cheesy magic guy now. And so sometimes you get people that are a little more hesitant to enjoy the magic on land. Not all the time. I'd say weddings are probably my favorite thing to do with magic because, again, people are in the right frame of mind. They're there, they're celebrating their friends and family that are getting married. And the magic just adds an element of surprise it's unexpected, but it's usually almost always appreciated at weddings, which I enjoy. Yeah.
Well, I would think that the people who were like, oh, some cheesy magician, you probably changed their mind and they had a different outlook, and maybe they might not have been in that frame of mind, but I would think you would have probably put them in that frame of mind because it is quite a fun experience watching.
Yeah, well, you know, one of my favorite experiences on the ship, there was an older couple that they told me right out the bat that they did not like magic. They thought it was, you know, suspicious. I think you often find that in kind of older, very kind of legalistic cultures or faith systems, which is totally fine, but they're just suspicious about magic. So a lot of people say, well, it's not magic, it's just illusions. Anyways, I had numerous interactions with this couple over the course of the cruise, and they said, you know, you changed our minds. We realized this isn't taboo, you know, it's just fun, especially the way that you presented it. And we feel like you've given us a new light into this very niche performance area. And that's the type of interaction that I live for, just to kind of get to know someone personally and also hopefully share what makes magic fun for me at the same time.
Right. And so where do you want to go in magic? What are your ultimate goals for magic? You know, you're on
You
the
know
cruise
what?
line now. What do you want to have your own show on Vegas? I don't know. I'm just thinking, you know.
Yeah, I think for so long, Vegas has been kind of the end all be all for magic. And I wouldn't turn it down, you know, if they gave me a show for a year or two. But ultimately, I think I would love to own my own theater, whether it's a magic theater or kind of a jazz club that also has magicians in. That would be kind of the goal for me. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but that's sort of what I'm shooting for. For now, the cruises are great. I'm hoping to still do more cruises with Virgin as well as other cruise lines around the country. But I'm also, you know, I do private events all the time. So that's sort of the short-term and long-term goals.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I have a question that I think people would have. We can relate to what it is magic versus mentalism versus mind reading. And you were talking about that older couple and, you know, thinking it was suspicious. So how does that all work differently, the same, or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, you know, I always tell people magic tricks are built to fool your eyes, where mentalism and mind reading is built to fool your brain, something like that. And there's a difference between mentalism and mind reading. I would say, first of all, mind reading doesn't exist. Now, people can fight me on that if they want, but if anyone claims they're actually reading your mind, they're probably a legitimate, you know, con artist. They're trying to scam you. But mentalism does exist, and it's largely, you know, psychology built in with misdirection and timing and the practice of magic. So it's kind of a genre of magic, but I love it. I love combining magic tricks with mentalism. So, you know, people see you pull out a deck of cards and they instantly think, oh, you're gonna do some sort of sleight of hand. But then you frame it in a way that makes them feel like, you know, you're in their head, you're reading their mind, or you've seen the card through their eyes. And that it just provides another layer of deception, but also I think enjoyment for the audience, at least in my opinion. There's strict magicians that are like, there's no psychology here, it's just a trick. And then there's strict kind of mentalists and quote mind readers that, I'll tell you this, they are using tricks, but they're also trying to frame it more like it's just psychology.
Okay. And so Sherrie, does he use mentalism in his magic too?
I don't know. My gosh, I was so just captivated by watching him. Do you use mentalism?
I do. Yeah, there is some psychology involved.
Yeah.
Kind of the most I get into it is trying to learn how to read people's facial expressions and sort of body language. Your classic poker tells. So poker players, they are mentalists, man. They practice this, they study it, and whether they call themselves that or not, they are. And I think magicians have learned from that, and they use those techniques to help, create an environment of wonder and misbelief. Whereas poker players, of course, they're using it to make some money. So yeah, I do a little bit of mentalism. I wouldn't call myself a mentalist, but I enjoy adding little sprinkles of that into my shows.
Yeah, body language, reading the body language. Yeah. People give up a lot more than they think when you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how can somebody find you to book you for a wedding or a show or whatever? Um, I thought you were fantastic. What's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, I do have a website. Kind of my title is The Honest Cheat. So they could go to my website. It's honest-cheat.com. Or I'm pretty active on social media, and on Instagram, it's just my name, which is Trenton Gunsolley. So they could find me at either one of those places. And, I do shows all over the place. I've been all over the country. I am based out of Colorado, so I do a lot of shows and private events in Colorado and the Denver area as well. But yeah, I'm always open to get in touch with people. I love doing magic for people any chance I get. And so pretty much any gig I'm open to talk about taking.
All right. Well, thanks, Trenton.
Awesome, Trenton. Thank you.
All right. And so go to storehousemediagroup.com for all things publishing, marketing, and media. Take care, guys. That was the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Storehouse Media Group podcast, guys.